You do things in the daily process of your life, and some things you do automatically. And I just happened to be disposing of some waste in a trash bin and pushed down, and there was a broken wine glass in there, and it just severed all the nerves in my right hand. And I had to have surgery on the hand, and it was 7 months before I was allowed to use the hand and contract, and the doctors didn't know how much the nerves would regenerate because there was a lot of nerve damage because it had severed the whole nerve bundle in my wrist. My name is Ian V. Curtis, and I'm an abstract implosion sculptor. And I use ductile metals and not so ductile metals to express human behaviour. As a child, I was a great observer of human behaviour, as much as you could be as a child. I was also fascinated with anything mechanical. Physics, the science of things, what makes things work. I did mechanical engineering, I did welding, fabrication technology. All these things have been useful, and it's my toolbox. It's what I draw on when I come to create my art. The wonderful thing about metal is it can show you what it has been exposed to, both in colour and also from the physical changes it gets. You can see the change in colour. That's where the heat has been imparted into the copper, been absorbed and spread out in a radiating pattern. It's very, very soft, it's ductile, one of its mechanical properties, which allows it to change shape tremendously. So that to me was a very good vehicle for communicating my art. I could show people by changing the metals I chose what I wanted to do, the way I see things through my art. Because I'm creating an airtight vessel, I have to make sure that all of the welds are airtight and secure and structurally sound to withstand the pressures that I'm imparting on the piece when I implode it. Each piece is an abstract metaphor for humans dealing with daily existence. Everything that is embodied in the human condition. That's joy, sadness, frustration, disappointment, expectation. My understanding of life and its peaks and valleys, it's what life gives you. It's a way for me to express my journey, express what I felt, express my understanding that as human beings we're all flawed, we all have the ability to do incredibly good or bad things. So in selecting the materials, I wanted maximum expression in my metals, but I also wanted something that would not totally fall apart or fracture, because it would not give me what I was desiring. So I chose copper and I chose steel. The steel creates the solid foundation for the piece, and if you see here, the copper, the copper starts out 10 inches square, and changes and compresses and folds itself into a very, very thin surface. And then because the pressure is pushing down in a dynamic matter on all sides the same amount, it actually crushes the piece down as well as in. The brazing is the method I use to join the two materials together. I can copper weld copper to give me a seamless join, but at the moment I'm very impatient and not particularly fussy. I want results, and I want to do pieces. I want to create change. I start out with an idea, normally a blank piece of paper, and I try and envisage how the piece will look at the end, and I have to reverse engineer it. So everything that goes before making the piece is laid out in my head. And I think of the structure on the inside that's going to withstand the forces of implosion, or how I'm going to manipulate the skin to make it change and distort in the way I want it to. I then lay out the external skin and do any joining of the two pieces, be it steel and copper, copper and steel. I then roll it up into either form it into a rectangle or into a cylinder. And then the structure is either fastened to the internal skin, or it's actually slipped inside and secured to the base of the sculpture. Then the top piece is put on, and then I go through the implosion process. Sometimes I just modify the skin's ability to bend by adding brazing metal on the inside. I kind of paint on the inside of the copper skin and literally writing the words love and hate on the four sides of the rectangle. So when it imploded, the distortion was apparent around the lettering, and the lettering stands out quite nicely. If I apply this back to the human nature or the human metaphor, not all of us are aesthetically pleasing. So why should my work be aesthetically pleasing? That's not a priority for me. It's the expression of humanity and change and pressure that is important. I would say the catalyst for the artistic expression came around 8 years ago. I had to go through a very traumatic event. Well, not just one, it was actually 5. I had been told by a lot of life coaches that you normally only have one life event per year, be it marriage, divorce, relocation. Well, I decided to take the harder route and do 5 in one day. I became divorced, I rented my house, I moved to a new city, I started a new job, I rented a new apartment, all in the space of one day. And my thinking was, if I do all that now, everything that comes behind it is going to be easy. That day, halfway through the day when I was moving into my new apartment, I had a lot of trepidation and fear about the future. And you can have a lot of fear about the future. What's tomorrow going to bring? And in these uncertain times that we're living now, everybody can say that, but if you take a global view on things and look around, you can always find somebody somewhere else in a far worse situation than you have. And if you take that perspective, and understand that, you can appreciate that you're very, very lucky to have the adversities that you have and know that you have the tools to overcome them. Well, with my art, I want people to touch it. I think when somebody looks at my sculpture, the first thing they say is, what is it? How did he do it? And when they start to examine it and look at all the creases and folds and twists and textures and surfaces that are created by the implosion process, the next thing they would say is, I wonder what it feels like to touch it. And I want my sculpture to be touched. I lacquer it. I coat it in a protective lacquering, allowing people to touch the work. I want people to look at my work and see something of themselves in it. See the subtle changes in the metal, the distortions, the twists, the turns. Each piece is akin to a human being. It's gone through something. It's gone through an experience. If one was to consider each piece was an individual, starting out totally pure, like a child with no imperfections, no scars, no wrinkles, no creases. And then I make it, and then I distort it, and I apply pressure. It's like I'm shrinking time. I'm applying a life's experience to that individual in a very small space of time, and depending on how much vacuum I put into it, that equates to how much change or how much pressure the human being has gone through. About 4 years ago, I was laying in bed and I couldn't sleep, and I was thinking about my art and my process and expressing what I felt. And I realized at that point I wasn't doing myself justice because I wasn't using my toolbox. I had this massive toolbox of over 27 years of experience in welding and fabrication, and I should use that. So then I set about creating what I thought was a unique process, an original process to create sculpture.